The history of modern Africa has produced many powerful leaders, but few names inspire as much fear and controversy as that of Idi Amin. Known around the world as the Butcher of Uganda, Amin ruled the East African nation of Uganda between 1971 and 1979, leaving behind a legacy of terror, political repression, and economic collapse. During his brutal dictatorship, hundreds of thousands of people were killed, tortured, or simply disappeared. Yet, despite the enormity of his crimes, Amin was never brought to justice. Instead, he lived the rest of his life in exile, dying peacefully decades later. To understand how one man could rise to such power and inflict so much suffering, we must go back to the beginning, to Amin's childhood, his unlikely rise through the army, and the political chaos that allowed him to seize control of an entire nation. Idi Amin Dada was born in 1925 near the town of Kiboko in northwestern Uganda. He belonged to the small Kakwa ethnic group and grew up during the era when Uganda was still a colony of the United Kingdom. His early life was marked by poverty and instability. Amin received very little formal education and reportedly struggled with reading and writing throughout his life. His father abandoned the family when Amin was still young, leaving his mother to raise him alone. She worked as an herbalist and traditional healer, and for much of his childhood, Amin lived a simple rural life. Despite his lack of education, Amin possessed physical strength and a natural talent for athletics. He became known locally as a skilled boxer and swimmer. His imposing stature, over 6 feet 4 inches tall, made him stand out. These traits would later help him enter a career that would define the rest of his life, the military. In 1946, Amin joined the King's African Rifles, a colonial regiment of the British Army stationed in East Africa. Interestingly, he initially entered the army as an assistant cook, but it did not take long before his physical abilities and discipline impressed his superiors. Over time, he received military training and was promoted to a combat role. During the 1950s, Amin served in British military operations against the Mau Mau Rebellion in neighboring Kenya. The rebellion was an uprising against British colonial rule, and the campaign was notoriously violent. Serving in this environment shaped Amin's military mindset. He developed a reputation as a fearless and sometimes ruthless soldier. As the winds of independence swept across Africa in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Uganda was preparing to become a sovereign nation. In 1962, Uganda gained independence from Britain. At the time, Amin had already risen through the ranks and became one of the few indigenous Ugandans promoted to officer status in the colonial military structure. This transition from colonial rule created opportunities for ambitious soldiers like Amin. The new political leadership of Uganda, particularly Prime Minister and later President Milton Obote, saw Amin as a loyal ally. He promoted him rapidly within the army, eventually appointing him commander of the armed forces. During the 1960s, Amin became deeply involved in Uganda's political struggles. The country was plagued by tensions between ethnic groups and political factions. At one point, Obote ordered Amin to lead a military attack on the palace of Mutesa II, the traditional king of Buganda. The attack forced the king into exile in Britain and marked a turning point in Uganda's politics. But the alliance between Obote and Amin would not last. By the late 1960s, tensions between the two men began to grow. Obote suspected Amin of corruption and involvement in illegal activities, including smuggling gold and ivory across the border. At the same time, Amin feared that Obote might remove him from power or even arrest him. Everything came to a head in January 1971. While Obote was abroad attending a Commonwealth conference in Singapore, Amin made his move. With the support of loyal troops, he launched a military coup and seized control of the government. Tanks rolled through the streets of Kampala, Uganda's capital, and Amin declared himself the new leader of the country. At first, many Ugandans welcomed the change. Obote's government had become unpopular, and Amin promised reform, stability, and prosperity. He presented himself as a charismatic and approachable leader, often appearing in public with a broad smile and a booming voice. But what began as hope quickly turned into a nightmare. Once in power, Amin began consolidating control through violence and fear. He purged the army of soldiers loyal to Obote, particularly members of the Acholi and Lango ethnic groups. The man who promised freedom would soon become the architect of Uganda's darkest chapter. Thousands were arrested or killed. Soon, the repression expanded to include journalists, intellectuals, religious leaders, and anyone suspected of opposing the regime. Uganda gradually transformed into a state of terror. Secret police and military units conducted kidnappings and executions across the country. Victims were often taken away at night and never seen again. Many bodies were dumped into the Nile River, which flows through Uganda. According to reports from the time, the river sometimes carried so many corpses that they accumulated in dams and hydroelectric turbines downstream. Workers at one hydroelectric facility repeatedly found that the turbines had become clogged by human remains, a grim symbol of the scale of the killings. Historians estimate that between 100,000 and 300,000 people were killed during Amin's 8-year rule, though some estimates are even higher. Amin's leadership style was unpredictable. At times, he behaved like a showman, making outrageous statements and granting himself extravagant titles. He famously declared himself His Excellency President for Life, Field Marshal Al-Hajj Dr. Idi Amin Dada VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and Conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general, and Uganda in particular. He also enjoyed humiliating foreign leaders in public. But the terror didn't stop at the borders. It was about to explode into something even more catastrophic. Some of his decisions had devastating consequences for Uganda. One of the most notorious occurred in 1972, when Amin ordered the expulsion of the country's Asian minority. At the time, about 80,000 Asians, many of them of Indian descent, lived in Uganda. Many families had lived there for generations and played a major role in the country's economy, running businesses and industries. Amin suddenly announced that these people had 90 days to leave the country. He accused them of economic exploitation and claimed he was returning Uganda to true Africans. Thousands of families were forced to abandon their homes, businesses, and possessions. Many fled to the United Kingdom, Canada, India, and other countries. The immediate result was economic chaos. The businesses and factories previously managed by experienced owners were handed over to Amin's loyal supporters, many of whom had little knowledge of how to run them. Production collapsed, shortages spread across the country, and Uganda's economy spiraled downward. At the same time, Amin increasingly isolated Uganda from the Western world. He broke ties with Israel and grew closer to leaders in Libya and other Middle Eastern states. His regime also became involved in international controversies, including the 1976 hijacking of an Air France plane that ended with the famous hostage rescue known as the Entebbe Raid. Inside Uganda, the atmosphere of fear continued to intensify. Even members of Amin's own government were not safe. Ministers and military officers who fell out of favor were often arrested, tortured, or executed. Some of the country's most prominent figures, including judges, church leaders, and politicians, were murdered. Despite numerous assassination attempts and coup plots, Amin managed to stay in power for years by surrounding himself with loyal soldiers and recruiting fighters from ethnic groups in neighboring countries that supported him. His army grew rapidly, becoming both powerful and unpredictable. In the end, the very ambition that brought him to power would be his undoing. However, Amin's downfall came from outside Uganda. In 1978, tensions between Uganda and neighboring Tanzania escalated into war. Amin ordered his forces to invade Tanzanian territory, hoping to strengthen his position and rally nationalist support. Instead, the decision proved disastrous. Tanzania's president, Julius Nyerere, responded by launching a full-scale counterattack. Tanzanian troops joined forces with Ugandan exiles who opposed Amin's regime. Together, they advanced toward Kampala, defeating Amin's army in a series of battles. By April 1979, the coalition forces had captured the capital. Realizing that his regime was collapsing, Amin fled the country. From the streets of Kampala to exile in the desert, one man's reign of terror had finally come crashing down. At first, he escaped to Libya, where he was welcomed by the leader Muammar Gaddafi, but his stay there was temporary. Eventually, Amin found permanent refuge in Saudi Arabia. There, he lived quietly in the city of Jeddah. The Saudi government provided him with a comfortable residence and financial support, on the condition that he stay out of politics. Despite the enormous number of crimes attributed to him, Amin was never put on trial. No international court prosecuted him, and Uganda never succeeded in bringing him back to face justice. For the next 2 decades, the former dictator lived largely out of the public eye. Occasionally, he gave interviews in which he defended his rule and denied responsibility for the atrocities committed under his government. Finally, in August 2003, Idi Amin died at the age of about 78 after suffering from kidney failure. He passed away in a hospital in Jeddah, far from the country he had once ruled with terror. The legacy of Idi Amin remains one of the darkest chapters in African history. His rule devastated Uganda's economy, shattered communities, and left deep scars that lasted for generations. For many Ugandans, the memory of his dictatorship is still associated with fear, loss, and trauma. And yet, the story of Amin also serves as a powerful warning. It shows how fragile political systems can be, how easily power can be abused, and how quickly a nation can descend into violence when institutions collapse and fear replaces the rule of law. Today, Uganda has moved forward and rebuilt much of what was destroyed during those years. But the shadow of Idi Amin, the soldier who became a dictator, continues to loom over the country's history. His life remains a stark reminder of how one man, armed with power and paranoia, can change the fate of an entire nation. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories we bring here. It really helps the channel grow and lets us keep producing more content like this. And before you go, take a moment to check out the 2 videos that are appearing on your screen right now. They dive into other fascinating and shocking stories from history that you definitely won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.